Hey guys, what is up? Lord Nick here, coming at you with another League of Legends related video. And in this video, guys, I'm going to teach you how to jungle. So this is going to go into some basic mechanics and ideas of the jungle and trying to take it a little bit of a step further. So we're going to kind of go into basic and intermediate kind of things. I wouldn't say that there's a ton of advanced mechanics that I'm going into here, but there's not a whole lot of advanced mechanics to jungling. It just comes down to becoming so good at these basic things that it's second nature to you, so you can start doing more mechanically intensive things. Um, or you can start doing them quicker, I guess is also the big thing. Anyhow, the first part about jungling is choosing somebody who is in the jungle category. Now, note there are champions I have favorited that are in here that are not actually junglers, but if you're just starting out, the best way to figure out a jungle, if you want to do jungle, is what champion do you want to play? And if they're listed as a jungler, play them as a jungle. So for this case, I'm going to choose somebody who is a jungle and becomes kind of a noob's best, a noob's worst nightmare, but best friend in the long run, and that's going to be Lee Sin. Um, so when we are going into the jungle, the first thing we have to think about before we're even in game, after we've selected our champion, is going to be our jungle route or the jungle pathing. So when looking at jungle pathing, there's a couple of ideologies that you can look at, but for the simplest route and the simplest way to do things is you start whatever your bot side's on. So if you're just starting out, do the bot side. On top of that, if you're just starting out, I recommend using this recommended. It's not the best, but it also helps out with giving you the items that you should look at. And at the start, for everybody that is a jungler, is you choose your jungle item, which is one of the three, red, blue, or green. I personally like blue the best right now, as the way the meta is currently. Blue is just the strongest. It was green, but they nerfed it. And then you take a health pot, and you take a ward. And you don't have to really click on the ward. It will give you the ward afterwards if you don't click on it, but just in case, you can take it. So you generally start on whatever side your bot is on if you're brand new to jungle. This is because your bot lane can give you the best leash. And if you're not super comfortable with kiting camps, which is something we will touch on here in a minute, then this is probably the best place for you to start. But as of the most recent couple of patches for jungle, it's not actually too terribly difficult to be able to do these camps on your own. Um, though if you choose a suboptimal jungle, you will find that doing some of these camps will be very difficult. Um, and as you're starting out, it's a very daunting task, right? Everybody expects a ton of the jungler, and that's because you are the highest potential impact role, but you're also the highest potential, like, useless role. So anyhow, as you're starting camps, you start on the side that your bot is on generally. Uh, in the case of the champion, I recommend kind of looking up what is the general start ability of the champion. You can use sites like Lolalytics or u.gg, or even looking at site. Even op.gg offers these things, but my preferred site is going to be Lolalytics. They're pretty good at telling you the general ability you start, followed up by the tree of abilities that you take. All right, so as you saw, I was kind of leading the camp down here. Now, I wasn't doing it super, super well, and part of that reason is because I kind of want to just showcase the simplicity of jungle. Like, even if you're not doing it optimally, you can get away with it by just doing some small movements. Now, if you're actually efficiently kiting, the way that this looks is that you're going to keep the minions at, where they have to move between every one of their attacks. So you do 2 attacks and then you move. 2 attacks, then you move. And this allows the minions to not hit you as much. Now, I am going to move more with the chickens, and the reason I'm moving more with the chickens is that these frickers hurt a ton. And you can use your smite on whatever camp you think you need to clear it out on the most. But generally, you want to be crossing here around between the 230 to 240 mark. So right now I'm going a little bit on the slow side, but I'm just kind of showing you the general route. So pay attention to the easiest thing to note is that I am choosing the camps that are going to be in the most of a straight line. And now some of you might be like, well, but you went to these guys first. Well, the reason I went to those guys is because you want to get all camps in your clear if you're just looking at it doing a full clear. If you're doing a full clear, you just want to get everything in the clear, but you want to make sure that you're doing it efficiently. So if I started here and went down here, then to get to the next camp, I would have had to walk all the way to here. So why I went down first was to make sure I could get all camps in my clear and then be able to come back up and do these camps as well. Now note, one of the big things to note with jungle pathing is you're not going to always want to full clear. There are a handful of junglers in the meta currently that are full clear junglers. Udyr is one of them. Lilia, when she gets back into the meta here with this buff that she's getting, will probably be one. Lee Sin is not a full clear jungler. He can full clear. It's just not an optimal thing for him. He is much more about early impact, as he has a ton of mobility and a lot of high base damages, which means that you want to be looking into pathing so that you can go straight into a gank at level 3. So what are some of the other paths that I could have taken? Well, I could have gone here, and done this camp because I wanted to gank bot. So whatever your last camp is should determine where you're trying to gank. So for instance, if I started on red side and I wanted to gank mid, this should be my chickens should be my last camp. If I wanted to gank bot, then Krug should be my last camp. If I wanted to full clear, this should be my last camp because it's the closest to the next camps that I'm going to. So you need to devise your jungle path based off of where you want to end up. So if you want to end up on top side, then you shouldn't probably start top side if you want to prevent somebody from taking your camps. There are also a couple other types of paths that you can take where you skip certain camps. So for instance, Lee Sin's early ability to take these multi-minion camps, which are generally considered Krugs, chickens, and wolves, because there are multiple minions at said camp, you don't want to take those because those camps are going to be taking you a lot longer. My only AoE ability is going to be E. Now, meanwhile, if you're on somebody like Gragas who has all AoE, those are his best camps because he takes them really fast. So based off of speed, you might change how you do it. There are a lot of different paths, but for now we're going with the standard full clear, and then the other one that you can do is a red to blue to Gromp for somebody like Lee Sin who wants to gank, or a blue Gromp red. You could do it in any real order there, but that's just determining what side of the map you want to end up on. So if you want to impact top, you start on the bot and you go to those 3 camps, and then you can hit the top or mid. If you want to impact bot or mid, then you start on the top side and move down. And it's that simple. That's not that hard. Now, where jungling becomes more difficult are these next 2 concepts. The biggest of the 2, in my belief, while people might be like, oh, it's ganking, right? No, ganking is not the biggest concept. Ganking is probably pretty simple, but it comes down to timing, and timing's difficult. The bigger thing that's more difficult is tracking. Jungle tracking is probably the hardest skill for a new jungler to learn, and it is the most, outside of becoming efficient with your clear, it is the most important skill for the jungler to learn. So what does jungle tracking mean? Jungle tracking is where you know where the enemy jungler is going to be. And the reason you need to know where he is and have a general idea where he's going to be is so you can ping people, danger, danger, danger. I can't come help you. There's somebody, the enemy jungle is coming. So you want to ping on your person to get their attention and ping the area that you think the danger is in. Now note, the other reason that you want to know where they are is so that you can mimic it if you're a better ganking jungler. So if you're better at ganking early than they are, or you're better at skirmishing early than you are, so like Lee Sin, you want to know where they are. So you can either 1, invade them and stop their clear, or 2, counter gank them to mess up their gank. So the way you do this is early on, you're going to want to put down wards in the enemy jungle. And I generally try to force in on the side that I think nobody's going to be watching, which happens to be top side, because this is not a... I mean, this is a jab at top laners, but it's not supposed to be. Top laners don't watch anything. And up until about plat elo, and even then it's very inconsistent, they don't guard the camps. So even up until about plat, like, people don't guard this side for their jungler, because they're too preoccupied with wanting to go up here and set up for their own lane. They're not thinking about protecting the camps for their jungler. So what you can do is, 1, you can do a cheese where you invade and take all of their top side because you don't think they'll be here. That can be risky because if you get smelled out by a good jungler, then you're going to probably die because your teammate isn't going to be backing you up. The other thing that you could do, which is the better thing to do, is you drop a ward on this side. And the reason you drop a ward is because if they're there, you now know that's where they're starting. And if they're not starting there, you can now extrapolate where they're starting. Because if they're not starting red, they're starting blue. Most likely. Most people don't do off-camp starters, but they might start at one of these camps. But most of the time people start at the buffs. So if you know, hey, he's not at red, then you can assume he's starting at blue, which means you can adjust your plan if you're trying to intercept them or if you're trying to avoid them. Oh man, if he's starting towards blue because we haven't seen anybody show up on red, I'm going to start my blue and go down. Or if he's starting on blue and I want to be able to counteract him, I'll start on my red and try to path the way I think he's going to path. So if you know he's a 3-camp jungler where he's going to do the blue, gromp, and red, then you should do a blue, gromp, red so that you're here at the same time to be able to match him or do whatever your 3-camp is that allows you to match him. Seems pretty straightforward, but the simplest way to start tracking is knowing where they are not or knowing where they are. If you also have an idea of one of the things that you can also do to help you track is if you see them show up for a 3-camp gank and you hadn't known where they were. You can look at how many minions they've done. So if they've done 12 minions, that means and you look over at them, so you have to pan down and look, but if you can see them, and you see that they only have one buff and it's during their first clear, you can assume they haven't done the other buff yet. So if you can get to the other buff before they are done with the gank, hey, that's a free buff for you. And maybe there's another camp you can do. So for instance, if they clear all 3 of these camps and go for an early bot gank, and you're already on this side of the map, and you see them doing the gank, and all they have is a blue buff, you should just immediately sprint over here. And the reason why is because that's a free buff for you, and that's a way for you to punish them. Because there's no way you're getting to the bot side to help out your bot lane at this point, right? Like, you can't run from here down to here faster than he can run from here to here. It's just not possible. You're just not going to be able to do that. So you have to look for opportunities to punish them. And the best way to do so is counter jungling or looking for a play on the other side of the map. So the ideas here of jungle tracking comes down to just being able to generally have an idea of where they're going to be. So you can make a game plan for what you want to do either in response to it or to prevent it, right? You can take preventative measures and you're like, okay, he should be on his red. I'm going to invade his red now because I think I can beat him in a one-on-one. If that's the case, you invade him and beat him on a one-on-one. And if it's not the case, then you back out and you finish whatever you're going to do and figure out what you're how you're going to do a plan that can be less broken up by the enemy jungler. Because if you know where they are, then you can know that if you go for a gank top and you know they're on top side, then you can expect they're going to counter gank. So you should play to get summoners from the top laner if you're going to go for this gank. And get their summoners, but not commit to a kill under tower because their jungler could be just waiting in the wings to kill you under tower. So the last bit of this is going to be talking about ganking methods. So because I've been hinting at it is after you get into tracking, after you get through pathing, the next thing that you have to kind of understand as jungle is ganking, which seems really insane, right? Like, that's so much you already have to remember, and we're not even talking about objectives and understanding objective timers and things like that. We're just talking about, like, the mechanical things. We're not even talking about timings and stuff. So, when we're talking about gank timers and gank pathing, the biggest things to know is that what you want to do when you are ganking is you want to make as much distance around the opposing laner. So, if the opposing laner is standing, I don't know, let's say that they're standing here, farming up the wave. Then I don't want to walk at them like this. You know why? Because they'll start walking this way, and they'll just go away from you. And if you're walking this way, that means you have to cut this way. And then guess what? There's probably enough distance that they're going to make it to their tower. So how do you prevent this? Well, there's one of 2 ways. If you have to come from this bush, because this is the route you chose, you need to be walking this way and cutting them off. Don't use your abilities unless you're for sure they're going to land, right? So for instance, with Lee Sin, one of the things you can do is like, I'm walking this way and I want to cut them off. So you ward hop over here and now you've cut the distance and you can slow them now. And now it's really hard for them to get away. And you do that and guess what? Now they're having to flash or they might die. So you've now guaranteed that you've cut off their gank path by walking at an angle that is going to meet them where they're trying to go. So predicting where they're going to walk to is the big thing that you have to do as a jungler for ganks. One of the other things you can do is looking for more opportunistic pathing. So if they're up there again, let's say they're up here again, and you have time to walk around, you can walk around this way. So now their only way out is this way. So if your mid laner sees this, they can block them from going that way. And then you're pinchering them, and there's no real way out for them at that point. So understanding how to make these impact plays, and this goes for every lane, right? Like if you're trying to gank bot and they have wards, you might want to sweep it out. So you use your sweeper to prevent wards from spotting you. But also, if you're just walking at them in a straight line, the simple answer is walking at them in a straight line is just never the answer. You need to be looking to cut off their retreat to make it more of a surefire play, or to at least guarantee you're going to get summoners from them. Because too often you just see somebody that it's like, oh, they're here, so I'm just going to walk at them here. And I even do this from time to time. And this is the bad play. Unless you see that they're starting to walk up, and then, yeah, this now becomes the cutoff angle. But, like, you want to pay attention to how they're responding, and you want to cut them off. You want to cut the distance and make it harder for them to get away from you. And don't use your abilities until you can be assured that your abilities are going to land. Because if you waste your abilities and you can't do anything with it, then, hey, guess what? You've just wasted your time on a gank and given opportunity for the opposing jungler to get ahead of you. In the next kind of video in this series, guys, we will talk about, because this one's kind of getting very long, the thing that we would talk about in the next one is going to be neutral objectives, knowing the timers, and that job. So this is kind of the basics to intermediate type of things for understanding the very basic parts of jungle. There's going to be a second video that, like I said, goes over the more complex aspects, which is where objective timers and neutral objectives come into play, understanding which ones you want to take and what you need to fight for. And then because of that, like how to go into the mid game as a jungler, because that's where the game state starts changing a lot for you, because ganking is not really an option. But hopefully you guys find this video entertaining and informative, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. And until then, have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.